The moon hung low over Lake Willow, its pale light slicing through the autumn mist like a blade. Eleanor stood at the edge of her backyard, her breath catching in her throat as she watched a figure move in the shadows. It was Clara, her daughter-in-law, her silhouette unmistakable even in the dimness. She was dragging something heavy, a suitcase, its wheels catching on the uneven ground. Eleanor's heart thudded. What was Clara doing out here at midnight? Eleanor, a widow in her late 60s, had always prided herself on her intuition. She'd raised her son, Michael, alone after her husband's death, and she'd learned to read people like open books. Clara, though, was a locked diary. Beautiful, poised, and endlessly polite. She'd married Michael 3 years ago. And while Eleanor tried to love her, something always felt off. A smile too tight, a laugh too forced. And now this. Clara stopped at the lake's edge, her breath visible in the chilly air. She glanced around, oblivious to Eleanor watching from the shadowed porch. With a heave, Clara swung the suitcase into the water. It hit with a dull splash, ripples spreading like secrets across the surface. Then Clara turned and hurried back to the house, her steps quick and deliberate. Eleanor's hands trembled as she gripped the porch railing. Her first instinct was to confront Clara, but something stopped her. The suitcase. Whatever was inside held the key to Clara's strange behavior. Eleanor waited until the lights in the guest room, where Clara and Michael were staying for the weekend, went dark. Then, slipping on her old raincoat, she grabbed a flashlight and crept toward the lake. The water was colder than she expected, biting through her boots as she waded in. The suitcase had sunk close to the shore, its handle barely visible above the surface. Eleanor's fingers, stiff with age and cold, fumbled to grasp it. After several agonizing minutes, she dragged it onto the muddy bank, her breath ragged. The suitcase was old, leather cracked, with a rusty zipper that groaned as she forced it open. Inside, wrapped in a plastic bag, was a collection of items that made Eleanor's blood run cold. A child's shoe, scuffed and small. A locket with a faded photo of a woman who wasn't Clara, and a bundle of letters, their ink blurred but legible. The top letter bore a name, Lila, and a date from 10 years ago. Eleanor's hands shook as she read the first line. "I can't keep this secret anymore. You have to tell him." Eleanor's mind raced. Who was Lila? What secret? And why had Clara thrown this into the lake? She stuffed the contents back into the suitcase and hid it in the shed behind her house, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. She wouldn't confront Clara, not yet. She needed answers. The next morning, the house buzzed with the usual weekend routine. Michael, oblivious to the night's events, flipped pancakes in the kitchen, his laughter filling the air as Clara sipped coffee, her face a mask of calm. Eleanor watched her closely, searching for a crack in her composure. Clara's eyes flicked to Eleanor's muddy boots by the door, and for a split second, her smile faltered. "Mom, you okay?" Michael asked, noticing Eleanor's silence. "You look like you didn't sleep." "Just restless," Eleanor lied, forcing a smile. Old houses creak at night. Clara's gaze lingered on her, and Eleanor felt a chill. Did Clara know she'd been seen? The day passed in a haze of tension, every interaction laced with unspoken questions. Eleanor waited until Michael and Clara left for a walk before sneaking into the shed to examine the suitcase's contents again. The letters told a fractured story. Lila, whoever she was, had been desperate, pleading with someone. Clara? To confess something to a man named David. The locket's photo showed a young woman with Clara's eyes but softer features, her smile unguarded. The child's shoe was the most unsettling, its small size suggesting a toddler. Eleanor's stomach churned. Had Clara been a mother? Was this about a child she'd lost? Or abandoned? Eleanor's search for answers led her to the internet, where she scoured for any mention of Clara. Lila or David. She found nothing definitive, but a local news article from a decade ago caught her eye. A missing woman named Lila Harper, last seen near Lake Willow. The photo matched the locket's image. Eleanor's heart sank. Was Clara connected to Lila's disappearance? And why was the suitcase in the lake? That night, unable to sleep, Eleanor confronted Clara. She waited until Michael was in the shower, cornering Clara in the living room. "I saw you last night," Eleanor said, her voice low but firm. "At the lake. I found the suitcase." Clara's face drained of color. "You don't understand," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You shouldn't have looked." "Then explain it to me," Eleanor demanded. "Who's Lila? What are you hiding?" Clara's eyes darted toward the bathroom, where the shower still ran. "Not here," she hissed. "Meet me by the lake at midnight. I'll tell you everything." Eleanor agreed, though dread gnawed at her. Midnight came and the lake was shrouded in fog. Clara stood waiting, her arms crossed, her face pale under the moonlight. "Lila was my sister," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "She died 10 years ago. An accident. I was there." Eleanor listened, her heart pounding, as Clara unraveled a story of guilt and grief. Lila had been in love with David, a volatile man who'd grown obsessive. One night, during an argument by the lake, Lila fell, hitting her head on a rock. Clara, panicked, had hidden the body, terrified of being blamed. The suitcase held Lila's belongings, items Clara couldn't bear to keep, but couldn't destroy. But the child's shoe, Eleanor pressed. "Whose was it?" Clara's eyes filled with tears. "Lila's daughter, Sophie. She was 2. After Lila died, I gave her up. I couldn't raise her, not after what happened. She's safe now, with a family who loves her." Eleanor's mind reeled. Clara had carried this secret for a decade, living with the weight of her sister's death and her niece's absence. But something in Clara's story didn't add up. The letters suggested Lila wanted to confess something to David, something Clara hadn't mentioned. Why throw the suitcase in the lake now? Eleanor asked. Clara hesitated. "Michael's been asking questions about my past. I was scared he'd find out. I thought if I got rid of it..." Eleanor's heart ached for her son, caught in the middle of this. "You have to tell him," she said. "He deserves the truth." Clara shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "He'll hate me." The conversation was cut short by headlights slicing through the fog. Michael's car pulled up, and he stepped out, his face a mix of confusion and anger. "Mom, Clara, what's going on?" Eleanor froze. Clara's eyes pleaded with her, but Eleanor knew the truth couldn't stay buried. "Michael," she began, her voice steady despite the ache in her chest. "There's something you need to know." What followed was a night of revelations, tears, and shattered trust. Clara confessed everything to Michael, her voice breaking as she recounted Lila's death and Sophie's adoption. Michael listened in stunned silence, his love for Clara warring with his sense of betrayal. Eleanor stood by, torn between her loyalty to her son and her pity for Clara, who'd lived in the shadow of her mistake for so long. In the days that followed, Michael and Clara separated, unable to bridge the chasm of secrets. Eleanor, haunted by the suitcase's contents, tracked down Sophie, now a bright 12-year-old living with a loving adoptive family. She didn't reveal the truth to Sophie, but left a letter for her adoptive parents, enclosing the locket. It felt like closing a circle, giving Lila's memory a place to rest. Eleanor stood by Lake Willow one last time, the suitcase now empty, its secrets laid bare. The water was still, reflecting the stars above. She wondered if she'd done the right thing, exposing Clara's past. The truth had cost her family dearly, but silence, she realized, had a steeper price. As she turned back to the house, the lake seemed to whisper, carrying its secrets into the night.